Blackmore.
Get your cameras ready, folks. This ain't gonna last long. Gotta make it
You know what you're getting yourself into.
Sure you can lay infectious, yet the freshest and the restless. Check this, what you mess with is a death wish. Let's get ready, cause you can't stop mind change. So stop sign on your back blind side. Go like a tank, hit like a tank. Clap for the work, put the money to the bank.
Wow, it was ridiculous.
MMA, well, mixed martial arts, if you will. But for today's fighting style variant video, there is such a plethora of mixed martial artists in the world of fighting games, and so many in our favorite characters that we don't even realize it. And especially with how the rise of MMA, UFC was during the early years, like the early 2000s and even the late 90s, if you will, was a lot more cutthroat and much more brutal when you really look back and think about it. And I feel with a lot of the fighting game developers that we do have today, of so many different characters that we do have, are trying to capture that modern UFC MMA aesthetic of different hoppage of different styles that is like very popular in today's time. So today's video is going to be a little bit similar to how the way I broke down judo, but this I will have to divide it within three main branches of how I'm going to go about it, and it's going to be strikers, grapplers, and all-arounders. And within those branches, going to have their own little subcategories that I'm going to be going over and throwing in characters that I feel that really fit those descriptions out there. And this will include characters that I pretty much even like skipped over and like completely forgot about. But grab your snacks, get your drinks, because you're in for a treat. Check it out, y'all. Strikers are known for their direct attacks utilizing parts of their body as a weapon. They most commonly use disciplines such as boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and many others to defeat their opponents using close hand techniques, elbow strikes, knee strikes, and kicks. So let's break it down like this in these subcategories within and going forward for these three different branches. And the first up is counter strikers. This is a fighter who typically uses a lot of feints, taunts, just things to get a reaction out of their opponent into making the first move in order to respond with their own well-timed blows, working off their opponent's weaknesses and openings. Examples of this type of fighter are Anderson Silva, Dominic Cruz, and Israel Adesanya. One character that comes to mind strongly for me immediately, since she's already a personal favorite of mine, I'd give this to Tekken 8's Azucena, a newcomer in the series that uses Rumi Maki boxing with MMA striking under her belt. Her entire fighting style approach revolves around deception, looking for that opening, along with teasing, taunting you to get you flustered and make a mistake. Almost forgot Li Chaolong, Martial Law, and Katarina fit this bill too. Other characters in mind that really hang in this subcategory are Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, and Cassie Cage from Mortal Kombat, Preacher from City of the Wolves, Brad Burns from Virtual Fighter, Guile, Jury, Lucia, DJ, and Ken from Street Fighter, for example. I'm sure there's a few more I've left off, but feel free to comment below any you feel that fit into these many subcategories going forward. Brawlers are strikers who utilize their toughness and power over refined technique. They specialize in dealing powerful strikes and dealing lots of damage. Fighters known for the style are Nate Diaz, Robbie Lawler, and Dan Henderson. Brawler style fighters that come to mind are Paul Phoenix immediately. This man prioritizes his power in his training and fighting style overall. Same for the newcomer Marissa in Street Fighter 6 using pancration with the heavy emphasis on strikes, your ability to toughen through blows to get you with that one big clean hit. She's a wonderful addition to the Street Fighter world. Miguel and Diego are both heavy-duty street brawlers that fit into this mold too. Raw power and strikes, even if they're sloppy, which I can draw some parallels similar to someone like Kimbo Slice. Jax is another good example of raw power in his striking, despite him having like a Muay Thai background and also wrestling in there in the mix, but he flaunts that raw power in his strikes, especially in his fighting style. Same for Cody, who's a big heavy brawler but learns on the fly, and we can even throw in Shin Wu from the King of Fighters series too. As simple as it sounds, aggressive strikers are fighters who are known to attack first and to dominate the pace of the fight, often working their opponent away from the center of the cage. Examples of this type of fighter include Nick Diaz, Paulo Costa, and Wanderlei Silva. Brian Fury's relentless pressure comes to mind with me on this one with his Dutch kickboxing style. Same for Raven from Beatdown Fist of Vengeance. Jackie Briggs from Mortal Kombat using many different styles of Muay Thai under her belt into this hot hog of a smorgasbord of just relentless pressure and just sidekick attacks. Zack from Dead or Alive, Marco from City of the Wolves, and Jean from Virtual Fighter is someone that I can also include into this list, especially with Jean and Marco with how the way they handle with Kyokushin and using relentless striking attacks on top of that. The big new protagonist of Street Fighter 6, Luke, is another crazy aggressive striker, along with Gai Tendo from Bariki 1. Now, grabbers dictate the fight by grabbing, holding, or controlling their opponent to the ground, gaining dominance through control, or finishing the fight with submissions. A grappler will often ground their opponent with a sweep, throw, or takedown, often utilizing cage and clinching. The most common disciples used by grapplers are wrestling, judo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And first up on the list for the subcategory of this will be submission experts. These are fighters that you would not want to go on the ground with and who stand out as the most dangerous threats from any position due to their submission background. Examples of these lethal fighters include Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira, and Brian Ortega. Laura from Street Fighter V comes heavy in mind to me with their BJJ representation. Don't let the pretty face fool you. Blue Mary with her freestyle sambo representation, using heavy submission techniques combined with wrestling aspects. You can even throw in Kakimaru from Virtual Fighter into the subcategory with his Japanese Jiu-Jitsu techniques. Now, some folks will argue with you that wrestling is the best single martial art background for MMA because of the wrestler's ability to dictate where the fight takes place. So it's no surprise that many of the UFC's top dogs come with tons of wrestling experience and that they choose to refine this skill as their number one skill. Examples of outstanding wrestlers include Daniel Cormier, Kamaru Usman, and Alexander Volkanovski. Abel from Street Fighter with the sports sambo approach, in which I believe this fighting style was a first for Street Fighter in general, if my memory is correct. Jeffrey McWild's pancration style in Virtual Fighter, where he uses a heavy emphasis on grappling wrestling techniques, is a pretty fascinating one too. Clinch fighting is most commonly associated with fighting styles like Muay Thai, but is now a vital part of some athletes' MMA game out there. Clinching is a type of grappling that occurs standing up and in close quarters, from which control can be asserted. Dirty boxing can be utilized, or a takedown can be initiated too. Great clinchers include Donald Cornell, John Jones, and Valentin Shevchenko. One of the games out there I would recommend checking out on with an interesting clinch system that I've seen in a while from memory would go to Def Jam Fight for New York. Any character that has kickboxing as one of their styles will have access to clinch holds and attacks. Now to our traditional fighters out there, We could definitely put some of our Muay Thai fighters into this, for example, like Bruce Irvin with some of his throws techniques, Bakuram, and Zack. And the last subcategory for this branch, I would like to give this to lay-in prayers. These fighters typically look for a takedown before applying pressure and control on the ground while waiting for their opponents to give them openings for strikes and submissions. They may seem overly cautious from this, but their patience often really rewards them in the end. Examples is George St. Pierre, Jake Shields, and Ben Askren, which is someone we featured on this channel before. And last but not least for this branch is all-rounders. Rather than really honing their skills in either grappling or striking, many mixed martial artists dedicate years to strengthening both sets of skills and filling in any gaps in their game. Strikers who work to become significant grapplers and grapplers who sharpen their striking. These fighters who really just look for the best of both worlds utilizing fighting styles. And how the way we're going to break this down, we're going to do ground and pounders, a style in which fighters utilize wrestling in an offensive manner to take their opponents down before striking so much explosive punches, elbows from above. Examples I can list here is Tito Ortiz, Chael Sonnen, and Cain Velasquez. Sprawl Brawlers is the next subcategory, which this is someone who focuses defensive wrestling techniques to make sure the fight stays on your feet, preventing any takedowns so they can utilize their strong striking skills. OGs of the Sprawl and Brawl style has got to go to the Iceman himself, Chuck Liddell, and also Crow Cop. Best way I'll go about this, these characters will represent all of these subcategories since they do take every bit of the aspects of these. Craig Marduk from Taken is such a super strong all-rounder to me with his Baldudo background, which is super perfect with also having a ground game component to him. Same for Virtual Fighter's Vanessa, who is also a Baldudo fighter. We can't forget about Dead or Alive's newcomer Mila being that game's MMA representation, which I gotta say, she's solid. Having a ground system like both Marduk and Vanessa, along with submission holds, a great set of striking moves too. She's a solid all-rounder character. Fighting EX Layer's Blair Dame with her shoot boxing style while using heavy submission-based techniques and takedowns is such an interesting dynamic to me for this character, I had to include her at. Hell, Sergei Dragunov and Baneman's combat sambo style I'd also put into this all-rounder category, having wicked strikes, nice grapples, submissions, and a decent ground game in their respective games. Same can be said about Pocket Bravery's sambo fighter Arsha. The list goes on. There are so many I can name here, but we'll be here all day if I did that. I feel the main reason we see this so much with the developers out there of just getting that MMA UFC look is just, it goes back to what I said even in the intro. It's just very popular nowadays, and you will go somewhere and happen to see UFC on, even if you just go to a place like, say, Buffalo Wild Wings or even a bar sometimes if sports isn't really on. But yeah, it's just a really popular combat sport as it is. So I feel you're going to see more Japanese developers like get into that with more characters down the line, current fighting games or new fighting games that are coming out. Like nearly like right now, this is the renaissance of fighting games coming out, of new modern fighting games, as I would say, for 2025 and beyond. So hopefully we end up seeing a lot more of that aspect, and also they end up grabbing some reputable UFC fighters or just anyone in general in that lane to sit there and do mocap or even just discuss and talk about these things with these developers, and that way we end up seeing some brand new characters come out from all of this. it's quite amazing to just see how much growth there is in traditional fighting games, along with just seeing all these multiple different characters just have these mixed martial arts within their repertoire of fighting styles out there, and it's vastly growing. So hopefully that does not slow down anytime soon, and we just end up having to see just more characters get created and keeping that alive, of that aspect of that modern UFC MMA aesthetic. So characters like Luke is like one of the big perfect examples of the most recently, even while I say recent, it's not so much anymore since he did come out at the late end season of Street Fighter V's life, but he was mainly created for Street Fighter 6 being the new protagonist, and also to represent that popular UFC MMA look, and just of a fighter in general. So hopefully we end up seeing more characters like that down the line. But if you enjoyed today's video, please give a like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you can stay updated of any new videos coming to the channel. This is Blackmore here, signing out, y'all. And we will be opening up another poll once again of what other styles would you guys love to see me cover in the future, because right after this one I do have the Mantis style that I will be going over, since that one is the very last of this batch. And then after that we'll be opening up polls once again, but I'll end up opening up polls in the community tab posts very soon, so be on the lookout for that, y'all. But anyways, don't want to take up too much of y'all time. Catch y'all next time, folks. Peace.